Bonjour or bonsoir, mes amis. I have a terrible French accent, but I'm back to let you know that we've got another installment of our third wine season interview with our amazing sponsor, Erath. I had the chance to sit down this season with the globe-trotting winemaker, Leah Aiden. She's head winemaker for Erath Winery, and she has made wine in Australia, France, and Switzerland, as well as many places in the United States. So I'm going to ask her today to share her global perspective on wine and also tell us a bit about holiday traditions she's picked up on her travels. So join us as we sip the Erath Resplendent Pinot Noir 2019. I love that. Resplendent. What a wonderful name for a wine, which you can pick up as part of a special 3-pack of wines at Erath for 15% off. That's at erath.com/theforetop, and you can make the most of that promo code FORETOP through the end of the year because you can order additional wines at that same discount. So what are you doing? Order the wines, drink with us, and enjoy the show. And now, here's the Foretop.
You know, I had a friend that came over recently, and this person's super into protecting all life and everything. So there was a spider in the house, and she's like, "Hey, you know what? You got to take that spider out instead of killing it." So I did. I went out. We had a few drinks. Nice guy. He's a web designer.
Hello and welcome to the Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in the wine and food world. I am your host, Katherine Cole.
And I am your host, Martin Reyes, Master of Wine. And you know what, Katherine? Today we are a 3-top, not a 4-top, which I find very fitting because we are going to discuss Web 3, also known as Web 3.0.
Yes, we are going to talk tech in this episode. But before we introduce our guest, whom you may have heard in the intro, we need to do a little backtracking and explain what Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 are so we can understand Web 3.0. So I'm just going to quickly begin with Web 1.0, which according to Wikipedia, which is a very Web 2.0 thing, Web 1.0's era was between about 1991 and 2004. This was back when everyone had an AOL email account. But other than email, the internet was not really interactive. It was really a read-only platform. It was a place where you could get information that you previously probably would have had to go to the library to get. And to me, my Web 1.0 memory that stands out is being in grad school and having to sign up. I think we signed up on a bulletin board to get LexisNexis access.
I remember that.
96, because we wanted to access legal documents and legal articles for our work. I was at journalism school at Columbia. I also remember that year we took a class where we learned about this thing called Yahoo, and we couldn't believe that it was called Yahoo. So that's my Web 1.0 sort of transitioning to 2.0 memory. How about you, Martin?
Those were the days. I'm only a couple years younger than you, and so I came into college right when Yahoo was starting off, like as you just described. And it was interesting that you mentioned Wikipedia because, well, to those who are listening, I didn't even know there's these distinctions. So I'm with you. I'm a one-trick pony. I'm a wine guy and not much else. So this is Web 2.0, right? According to what I understand now, that's the era we're in now, in which we can all be creators on the internet and the interwebs. It's the participatory or social web, right? And during this time, we've cycled through platforms where we shared our opinions. 2.0 is also all about business. So for wineries, Web 2.0 has been just terrific because we've been able to sell direct to consumer. By the way, direct to consumer, you may hear us later on, it's DTC. The growth of business has gone hand in hand with, well, I mean, honestly, a loss of control over our own personal data.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But I know for a fact that, for instance, I'm furnishing a new kitchen over many months, and all of a sudden, Instagram knows. And I've bought a lot of stuff on Instagram. I've been targeted for like SodaStream, cooking gadgets.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to jump in here. I might be an anomaly because I am in love with algorithms controlling my life. I am in love with efficiencies because I am a one-man operation in my business, and I want to control the flow of my work. And I do appreciate algorithms. I put myself out there on websites, and I want them to kind of be able to kind of track how I do. I love the ability to have Shopify as my preferred platform of purchasing and commerce, and always being available, and always being, something that I can click on and allow me easy transaction through. It's like going in the easy pass lane versus waiting in line to pay cash in a toll booth. I'm all about the easy pass lane on the internet.
Katherine, who is that masked man?
We should introduce this guy.
Yeah. So Dan Petrosky is very well known. Katherine and I both are honored to consider you, Dan, a friend for quite a while, and also my co-founder of the Symposium for Sustainability in Napa. He was named a Drinks Innovator of the Year in 2022 by Food and Wine magazine. He's also the San Francisco Chronicle's Winemaker of the Year in 2017, a badass award, may I just say. Founder and winemaker at Masakan Wines, where he's making the wine. He makes vermouth, he makes beer, and more. He is a partner in the Band of Vintners winemaking project. He was the former winemaker at Larkmead Vineyards and is a co-founder, I already said that again, of Napa Thrives, name change. And I'm probably leaving out, 10,000 things. What am I missing, Dan?
I think I spend a lot of my time these days working on the board of Napa Valley Grape Growers and the board of Napa Green, which is a co-sponsor and founder of Napa Thrives. Name change, as you said, Martin. And those and my engagements with those nonprofit organizations here in Napa Valley are mostly personally involved in sustainability efforts. It's a great, renowned wine growing region in the world. And my goal is to make sure it's sustainable for the next generation.
Hear, hear.
Look up the definition of iconoclast. That is, Dan, and it's very fitting because we're talking about this Web 3.0 or Web 3. So let's talk about this because, Dan, you think far ahead of most people in our industry. We, of course, covered Web 1 and 2. But the pandemic has sped everything up significantly, right?
Yep.
Wineries that were still in 1, they're now selling most of their wines through DTC, through sophisticated web designs, e-commerce platforms, and then winemakers who previously didn't spend a hoot in front of their computers are now leading virtual tastings. I consider myself one of them, but I was reluctantly pulled into that. And I don't think anyone could have genuinely anticipated this shift could have happened so rapidly. So what is next? Dan, you spend more time than anyone else we know thinking about Web 3.0 or Web 3 as I think it's supposed to be called. So explain to us, what is it exactly?
So I like how you guys describe Web 1.0 and Web 2.0, or just Web 1, Web 2, starting off with Web 1 being search. It was this World Wide Web that we had access to, that we can go in and type in something and find something and have it come back to us. Web 2.0 started in the mid-aughts with the Facebooks and the Twitters, and that became and then later into 2010, 11, 12 with Instagram and Pinterest, and that became a more social, where we started sharing what we were doing. And eBay was a big part of that. People forget eBay. YouTube is still the elephant in the room. Web 3. So think about when you go and search for something, and think about the social engagement of it. Web 3 is a combination of both. So, for example, I am going down to a wine event in LA the beginning of November, and all I'm doing is searching best hotels in LA, what restaurants to eat in LA. What if there was an opportunity where, instead of just searching on a TripAdvisor or a Google or hotels.com, I had this opportunity to go in and search in almost a visual ambiance platform where I can actually experience these hotels in real time, so that I can decide whether or not this is the right place for me. So you think about search, instead of taking this one-dimensional search and getting these TripAdvisor or Yelp reviews for restaurants and TripAdvisor for hotels, what if that actually became three-dimensional? And my experience to that was, I put myself in that situation. Translate that to the wine industry, When someone's coming to Napa Valley or Sonoma County or somewhere in California or throughout the world, they're searching for their experience at a winery. They're just reading, they're seeing a lot of stories about the winery. They're seeing a lot of pictures about the winery. They're seeing a lot of people talk about themselves. And then they have to make a decision. And it's usually based on, whether it feels good to them. What if they can actually immerse themselves in that experience before they actually do an event in real life? I think Web3 is where that is going to take Web 1 and Web 2, take the search concept, the social concept, and give it a three-dimensionality. And that is something that I truly believe is what we're missing. Even in this conversation between the three of us here, we're sitting in a Brady Bunch-like web interface, having a conversation. And I do think that there's something missing, right? We're in this one-dimensional world. I think Web3 is going to bring us together, closer together, just like the telephone brought us closer together, just like the internet brought us closer together. That's the way I think about Web3. I don't think about it as some futuristic thing where I have to put a bunch of fucking goggles on and live in Mark Zuckerberg's animated world. I think about it as a more immersive three-dimensional space, whether you call that VR, AR is a completely different concept. But I think that we're moving into this technological space where we can actually have a heightened sensitivity to what we're viewing on the screen, just like we're doing with what Hollywood does to us every day when we turn the TV on or go to a movie.
This is so interesting because I've been thinking about this, Dan, as someone who works for a web design agency. And I've been thinking, oh my gosh, all of my clients could create a beautiful virtual tasting room that's way fancier and nicer than the tasting room they have. But what you're painting a picture of a virtual experience that's the actual experience. But then my question is, how does we don't know yet because this hasn't really played out yet, but how does the site visitor know whether they're seeing an idealized version or a true representation of the real experience?
Well,
or does it matter? I mean, maybe in the future it doesn't matter. Maybe we're all avatars and we just, I don't know, sit in our beds.
All right, I don't want to disparage wine influencers, but aren't wine influencers on Instagram and in social media? Aren't they just presenting a world that might or might not be true? That,
True.
Where every picture they post on Instagram happens to be a beautiful, representation of their experience at a certain winery or a vineyard. And I don't know, I've never seen, no offense, I've never seen someone gorgeous running through a vineyard with a glass of wine and like just having the greatest time of their life in real life,
No.
but I see it on Instagram all the time. And,
no one's hair looks that good. No one's hair looks that good, ever.
So, I mean,
mine does.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
So I do think about that. Like Instagram has created, one-dimensional aspirational experiences. We are creating a past experience. We drink a bottle of wine, we post it on Instagram. It is a previous experience. I think Web3 is going to provide a future opportunity, aspirational experience. We can aspire to the past, which is called nostalgia and romance. I drank a bottle of great wine last night. I posted on Instagram. It's very one-dimensional. It's a record of my history. Web3 is my future history. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to hang out. It takes that into a three-dimensional space that allows you forward momentum, as opposed to just saying, FOMO, I wish I was there with Katherine and Martin drinking that wine at Farmstead like we did just a couple of weeks ago. And that's a FOMO experience where I think we can offer aspirational experiences in Web3.
We've had this progression of trying to mimic the real life best version. And if you can't fly to Alsace and sip some Grand Cru Gewürztraminer, Web3 is designed to enhance that kind of potential experience.
So, I mean, you set the stage for a perfect example. Video killed the radio star. Cable killed linear TV. Streaming killed cable. What's going to kill social? That's the question. What's going to kill social media? What's going to take social media to another level? So if you think about technology and how we consume culture. That's the arc, right? And the way you described it earlier, and I was so happy to hear Katherine talk about her time at Columbia Journalism School, because I spent my undergrad at Columbia and I graduated just a year before you arrived. And in 2004, I dropped the class because the professor said I had to send my homework in via email, and I had no idea in 2004 what email was. So I can't take this class.
Okay, I remember that there was a student at the beginning of the year who said, "Can I file my stories from on site, from the road?" And we were all like, "Who is that asshole who thinks he can just file his stories from wherever he is?" But yeah, we didn't know that you could do that, and now everyone does that. Anyway, go ahead.
Right.
And then in 2004, I dropped the class, and then in 2006, I was building the Sports Illustrated website on HTML. So it happened so quickly for me, and it just got me into this kind of progression of saying that everything that we're afraid of is possible.
Dan has obviously an acumen in wine that is miles long. But before that, a lot of what came out of this was that your pre-wine profession was in media, as far as I understand it, right? So you're still kind of seeing our industry kind of through an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, the fact that we as an industry, I jokingly say like we're just a bunch of Willy Loman, we're a bunch of Death of a Salesman. Like we still go door to door. And Martin, you're going to be very familiar with this in your new in your new acquisition and ownership of a distribution company. You go door to door to present your product. It reminds me of when the encyclopedia salesman came to my house and had to sell my mother on, a working mom of four, and that these encyclopedias are going to help your 4 children be better in academics. And I think like that is like this weird thing, like where there's this bootstrap, like kind of worn, torn soles of the shoes, salesmanship of the wine industry that is so antiquated that we haven't evolved yet, because we are a B2B business, because we sell to secondary and tertiary markets. And as Martin, you said earlier, DTC, direct to consumer. We have not succeeded as a direct to consumer or business quite yet. We have always been tracking 10 points behind the rest of the economy in direct to consumer sales and e-commerce. The wine industry is 10 points behind. So prior to the pandemic, DTC sales were 16% for all products in the country, and the wine industry was 4 to 6, so 5. During the pandemic, DTC sales went from 16% to 26%, and the wine industry jumped from 4% up to 14%, 16%, and then now it's kind of like settling back down because we are no longer in quarantine. The wine industry has always been a decade or two behind. And we saw this in the food industry. Like we saw this in how restaurants had adopted, and how we went from celebrity chefs to celebrity somms. We saw that kind of tale of food bringing wine into the mix. And now it's technology is the same way. Like the way that we're going to adopt technology as marketers, we've always told everyone that video is the king and queen of the future. And that's because YouTube, no one wants to talk about YouTube, but YouTube is silently the largest, most incredible creator-driven economy. And we were told as wine industry, I remember standing in the cellars of my prior job at Larkmead trying to do video tasting notes because we wanted to put it on our website because we were told we should do video. And I'm like, guess what, guys? Zoom is video, but it's live. It's 100% in real time. You get to interact with people in real time and answer questions. This is like live radio, but in video form. Video killed the radio star. Like, this is it. This is TV. This is video.
Hello, listeners. I am back in Portland's Pearl District at the Erath Tasting Room. Erath has very generously sponsored this wine season of the Foretop, and I am lucky enough to be chatting with Leah Adent, head winemaker at Erath, which is a very historic winery here in Oregon's Willamette Valley. And Leah, we've been talking about the holidays, and you told us about growing up in Alaska, but you've worked in viticulture and winemaking all over the world, in Australia, France, Switzerland, California, Washington. You got your master's degree in enology from the University of Adelaide in Australia. I'm just curious to hear, I guess, first of all, what your experiences were like making wine all over the world. And second of all, like, just for fun, since the holidays are coming up, what are some kind of food and wine traditions that you picked up along the way?
Yeah. I feel so fortunate. The experiences that I've had getting able to travel and make wine for anybody and everybody across the world. And, you know, one of the big differences, obviously, with Oregon is that it is so Pinot Noir focused. There's very few regions that have such a dominant variety, which I think is a double-edged sword. I love being able to play with 10 different varieties in a winery, and I also love the focus and intricacy that you get with just one variety, and then you get to focus on clones or vineyards or soils and kind of push those aspects of the wine. So that's definitely a big difference for me coming to Erath from some of those other regions. Some fun wine traditions. When I was in Australia, you know, they have a hot Christmas. So most people are not cooking a big all-day oven meal. And so one of the big things that I learned to appreciate was the sparkling Shiraz.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you want a proper Christmas meal, but a big red wine might not do the trick when it's 100 degrees out. So that's when the sparkling Shiraz comes out. And I didn't love it at first, but I grew to love it. I still love it.
Yeah.
So that's a fun one for me.
That's one of those wines that you think there's no way this can possibly work. And then you get a good one and you're like, oh, yeah, I kind of get it.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's a wine worth trying a couple times in my mind, because I didn't love it the first time. But in the right moment with the right group of people, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And so, okay, so they weren't cooking in the oven. They must have been barbecuing though, right?
Barbecuing, lots of seafood, lots of prawns. I actually had one of the years while I was in school, so I didn't have a ton of money to fly back to the U.S. to come home. I had a friend invite me to their actually very traditional Christmas dinner. So it was 100 degrees out, but they were cooking up a storm in the kitchen. They actually found a tree and decorated it, which most people I don't think do in Australia. It was it was so nice of them to invite me and bring me along, and we started with sparkling Shiraz. And we ended with Penfolds Grange, and it was an incredible moment.
That is the perfect Australian experience right there. That's so fantastic.
It was so lovely.
And, you know, I bet the Erath Resplendent Pinot Noir would have gone well with that meal.
Absolutely.
And actually, this would be really good with barbecue as well.
It would, yeah. It's got nice, rich fruits, you know, enough structure to hold up against some of the smokier meats or charred meats, but still nice and fresh. You know, it's still Pinot Noir at its heart.
It is. I mean, it's very refreshing. The acidity is great. And, you know, we are actually recording this before lunch. And I'm feeling very refreshed. It's juicy. It's yummy. Yeah, this would be a great barbecue wine. And holiday wine, for that matter. Well, thank you, Leah. Listeners, I bet you want to experience this resplendent wine as well. So please head on over to erath.com/thefourtop. Enter the promo code FOURTOP, that's FOURTOP, in case you didn't know, to receive a 15% discount through December 31st, 2022. That's good for bottle purchases as well as the very special FOURTOP 3-pack, which includes the Quail Run Pinot Blanc, this very resplendent Pinot Noir we're tasting right now, and also the Single Vineyard Knight's Gambit Pinot Noir 2019. So, Leah, I am looking forward to continuing our conversation, but for now, back to the show. I want to backtrack a little. Dan, you sort of painted the picture of the incredible sort of virtual universe we could all enter in Web 3.0, but what about our privacy? Will Web 3.0 be a place where consumers have more privacy? And will that be a problem for wineries? Because we've finally, as to Martine's point, we've finally caught up with this, you know, DTC online sales thing. And suddenly wineries are realizing this makes great economic sense to be selling wine directly, but they are targeting their customers and they're using targeted email marketing, and it's all going great. But if we transition to a new model, is that all going to be lost? I'm, on the one hand, as a consumer, I'm like, great, I don't want everyone to have my data. But on the other hand, as someone who champions wineries, I want them to be able to continue to sell DTC really efficiently.
The one thing that I actually feel is being underserved in this conversation about privacy and access and data transparency is that what the blockchain has created, the blockchain is kind of record of transactions. It's a giant Excel spreadsheet laid flat. It's like a matrix moving forward.
If you don't know what blockchain is now, please listen to our episode earlier from last season. So we've covered that briefly, and NFTs as well. But Dan, please continue it. Just wanted to make sure people knew that.
So in order to access a lot of that information, to access purchasing and transactions and hanging out, you need this thing called a crypto wallet, which is, it's not even a crypto wallet. It's just a digital wallet that works for the blockchain. Crypto is just a weird phrase that I think scares a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It's a digital wallet that accesses all the transactions on the blockchain. The beauty of that is that, as I think about it from a perspective as a wine supplier, someone who sells wine, in order to get one of these wallets, you need to prove certain things. And a lot of that has to do with like age and identity verification. So you have to actually upload your passport or your driver's ID, and then that is your information. So it's like, if you upload your passport, it doesn't know where you live, right? But it knows your name and that how old you are and that you have been governmentally certified as a human being, and there are no red flags on your record. So that is a very generic version of who you are. Now, if you have a crypto wallet and you have your passport in there, now we know your age and you know your who you are, but your actual crypto wallet is still anonymous. How many? I literally 6 months ago signed up for 1Password, and I am still like loading passwords. 6 months later, loading passwords into this
so
thing.
Tired of it.
It is so tiresome. Where this crypto wallet becomes your easy pass. When I go through the toll booth at in the Golden Gate Bridge or the Bay Bridge, they know who I am. They have my credit card. They charge me for it, and I can go through the toll booth. And if something happens, they even know my license plate number. If something happens, they will then come back to me and ask me a question. But I'm pretty anonymous when I'm flying on the highway going through the toll booth. And that's what that's what I think this whole wallet concept is. And then once you get into there, so I think about the privacy of it. I think about and it's not about selling your stuff through an algorithm. It's about access.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yes, I believe in guardrails, just like a highway has guardrails. You can be on the side with the Easy Pass. You can also be on the side with, you got to go sit there in line for 2 hours and pay your fucking 75 cents. Where now it's like $7.75. But you know what I'm talking about. And I think that is the digital highway, the web highway, all that stuff is just very simple to what we did in infrastructure with creating easy passes versus sitting there. Like, you can be completely anonymous, or you can be anonymous with access.
Or like that, the global entry card when you travel. I love that. I'm like, great, U.S. government, take all my information so I don't have to stand in the line,
So kind of like a key, where keys don't have information on them, but they can open the right door.
The keys to maybe a safe deposit box where all of your data is stored.
Right. So there's still a vulnerability, but it's still several steps removed.
Let's use Shopify, which is a quote unquote Web 2 analogy. I think Shopify is, I don't even know how to put it into Web 2, but so if you go to a website that is Shopify enabled, you are being asked to put in your email address, and then it sends you a text message, and you put in a text code, and then and Shopify has captured all of your information. So across multiple websites, you have this easy access pass called Shopify. It's no different than a potential future web wallet. I chose to be a part of the Shopify network and to be able to have this kind of access throughout the Shopify network, just like I chose to be a part of the Amazon network and get free shipping and all the other things that come along with being a Prime member. And it gives me access to a huge amount of content and information. There's a lot of businesses that don't sell product, that sell services or content, that don't have the Shopify or Amazon access, that might use, and this is wine, Wine has a lot of other tangibles that are related to compliance that we need to consider. And the number one thing about compliance with buying wine online is age verification. And these digital wallets can do that for you. And they can also actually provide you with logistics with state verification. If you're shipping wine direct to consumer within states, your crypto wallet will be able to, once you log into a website, you'll be able to see if whether or not you actually have access to purchase any of that product. And that's how I'm going to transition that into the metaverse. Because that's where I see my future potential revenue generation is in the metaverse, and it being a global 24/7, 365 environment. I still need the guardrails that will allow me to sell wine to the people that I am legally licensed to sell wine to, unfortunately, because I have rules and restrictions. And then I think that is the biggest part of Web3 that the wine industry has, the hurdle that the wine industry has to overcome.
You have mentioned, I think, to both of us that you believe you'll be selling more wine in the metaverse in 2030 than in real life, IRL. So tell us what you mean by that.
The way I meant it was I was selling more revenue than I will be selling wine. So my revenues in the Web3 through wine sales, through beverage sales in the metaverse will be higher than in real life sales. I am a small business that doesn't have a tasting experience. I can't give you an opportunity, and I deal with this every day as I'm the only person who works in Moscone in the customer service. Hey, I'm in Napa Valley. Can I come and taste? Like, there's more people. More people that email me at like noon that want to come and taste at 1. It's phenomenal. It's but because winery is in my name, they just assume I have a physical space for them to come and enjoy my wines. I don't. I'm completely virtual, and that's pretty much about 2/3 of the wine industry in California is virtual.
You do have a physical space. It's 6'2", 200 pounds of solid awesomeness, right?
200. I would go a little higher than that, but thank you, Martin.
All right.
I love you. I love you for saying that. I'm wearing black right now, so I'm looking a little stealth. But anyhow, no. So I do believe that Masakan as a brand is something that lives virtually. It lives in your romance and your nostalgia and your aspiration for what you want in a white wine. I can try to convince people as a marketer of that brand that Masakan is something that you want aspirationally, that has been part of your life nostalgically or romantically, whether it's been a Mediterranean vacation or a vacation to Cabo or a vacation to Miami Beach or whatever. I tried to convince you through my marketing efforts that this is a brand that will fulfill some of those nostalgic and romantic ideals that are also aspirational. So I think of Web3 as for Masakan as a natural transition. The metaverse is a natural transition for to take these customers that I'm trying to convince that this is something that they can't experience in real life. They can't come to a winery in Napa Valley. They can't go to a vineyard in Napa Valley. I have 11 white grape varieties that I source from 11 vineyards. I can't bring them there and be like, oh, this is Masakan, because you're going to see my Valangina vineyard, or you're going to see my Ribolla vineyard, or my Tokai vineyard. That doesn't exist. How do I take that customer on a journey of aspiration?
Dan, this is fascinating. To me, it completes the picture of an episode that we did, episode 105, where we talked about how the future of what technology is giving the wine industry. And so we talked about NFTs and companies like Club Divan, I think, where there was at that time the conversation was gamifying the wine club experience. And the commerce around what NFTs were. Please listen to episode 105 if you want a fun episode on that subject that clarifies things for me as well. But then there was this moment in that episode, as important as the commerce is of what NFTs and what all those things do and what Web 3.0 will do. There was a little bit of like, is that what we're turning into? We're turning it's okay if you do that, but where is the soul of the experience of wine? Where is it retained? And what you're painting the picture is on the other side. You're saying you're complementing that transactional engagement. There's a point at which you're rehumanizing the entire experience to enrich it in a way that speaks to those that want to experience wine for all the reasons that we fall in love with it.
You bring up a great point, Martin, in the sense that if you're going to create an NFT of a bottle of wine, all you're doing is creating, on the surface level to 95% of the consumers. You have to think everything lives in a bell curve. You're converting an NFT into an Instagrammable moment.
Mm-hmm.
An Instagrammable is still this flat moment in time.
And it's a bragging right.
Yes. And the
There's
NFT
gamification.
adds the utility of sharing that. How different is it if I open a bottle with both of you guys? I open a bottle of Dagenau when we're sitting together at a dinner table, and then I post it on Instagram and I share it with my 12,000 followers. But as an NFT, I'm sharing it with you two, 12,000 followers, whatever. But I share it with you two. And as an NFT, because you experience it personally with me, there is a human connection there that I do that, right, as an NFT. And then you can put it into your wallet as if you're putting it into your seller tracker. But I still think that and then there's this record keeping, which is, I think the true utility is the record keeping. It's not the NFT. It's not the FOMO moment in time. It's the record keeping that I was there. I always go back. I mean, my life is, the whole Instagram thing resolves around LCD Sound System, with that song where they kept talking about, I was there when this happened. I was there when this happened. I was there. It's all about this whole FOMO experience, right? Yeah. And we all live that experience. But Martin, I think you summed it up perfectly when you talked about humanizing it. I don't want a bottle of Masakan to be, shared in a crypto wallet. I want a bottle of Masakan to be put on a real life table. But if I can drink that while we were sitting in this really aspirational space and not in a Brady Bunch Zoom, it's just, and my bigger dream is Hollywood, right? Hollywood has always been late. I heard this great, this great description of Hollywood as laid back entertainment, where you just sit back and enjoy, and it just comes to you and you absorb it. But what about the gaming industry has changed that. The gaming industry is active in entertainment. How do we come between Hollywood's aspirations and the gaming industry's and aggression? And how do we create this romantic, aspirational view of someone visiting a vineyard or a wine bar or a tasting room or,
oh my God, you're speaking my language. The answer is haptic technology, but that is another.
It's an episode 200.
That's another episode where we all have little sensors, and we can smell, and we have sensors on our faces, so we can smell the wine, we can feel the vineyard, we can feel the breeze. I mean, I'm actually excited for that. Actually, I love what you both are saying, because it does tie into something. I think we've all had our eyes on Meta, which used to be Facebook and Instagram or whatever it is now. And Dan and I were actually talking about Mark Zuckerberg before we started taping today. And I think what I'm hearing from both of you is, there have always been these sort of dystopian visions of the future that are, where technology just, it's controlled by these large companies and they destroy us all. But what's been interesting about technology driving forward is it's been social. It hasn't been driven by business. It's been driven by human connection. And maybe it makes sense that Mark Zuckerberg is the one who is really pushing ahead with the metaverse and investing so much into it, because he is seeing that, first comes the social. First comes our kids on TikTok, and the rest of us are like, "What is going on here?" I don't know. And then the rest of us adopt it, and we realize, "Oh, wait, this is a really nice way to interact with other human beings."
100%, and I think that
thank you, Katherine,
the reason why Mark
bringing faith back into whatever.
And look, and I don't want to shit on Mark Zuckerberg, but there's a lot of reasons to shit on him, and he's been lionized and he's been demonized, and the conversation, Catherine, you and I had earlier was that I think that he's the loneliest person in the metaverse because he is a genius, hands down. We understand that. And whether or not you believe in what he has created or not, he's transformed our world 100%. And I think that he has the ability to transform the world again. Unfortunately, he has not come out on the better side of his initial transformation of the world through social. And I think that he is the worst person to be the father or grandfather of the metaverse, because I think he is not necessarily the most personable person, and the humanization of Web3 is this kind of tactile feel, this hap technology, as you're talking about. That's Web3, and Mark's not that person. He's awkward, and he is now awkwardly introducing what could potentially be the most important thing that we've lived our lives through.
I think it's time for us to transition to our dessert wine course, where we each share a little something wonderful that we've been enjoying recently. Martin, you're sipping some nice red wine there, but what's your dessert wine course?
Oh, well, it's not so much wine. It's going to be something probably the most expensive thing I will share with you. But I mentioned, I alluded to it earlier. It was the Lomi, Lomi, which is the composter on the counter. That is this machine. It's about the size of a microwave.
Oh my God, I'm buying one right now. I'm Googling it. Sorry, I'm buying one right now. Go on.
And so you put your food scraps in, and out comes a few hours, a day or 6 hours or a day later, you choose your setting, dirt basically. And you can put your cheese, your tamale shell, your tortillas, the kids' wasted cereals in the morning, rather than putting it into garbage, but then goes into landfill, then just produces methane, which then increases our climate change problems. You use Lomi. Anyways, Dan, what about you? What is your metaphorical dessert wine course?
Yeah, no, I'm excited because I love Chardonnay. It is probably my favorite grape variety. I love it in all forms. I can drink it from sparkling wine to Rombauer, and I'll still just enjoy a glass of Chardonnay. And
right on.
A few years ago with my tasting group, we decided, I did a blind tasting. I hosted a blind tasting where we posted Rouleau, Mécheveau over multiple vintages, 5 vintages, versus Sandy over
hang on.
vintages.
Insider baseball here. First of all, you mentioned Dagenot about 20 minutes ago. Dagenot is a producer in the Loire Valley that makes Sauvignon Blanc in the Puy Fumé across from Sancerre. Ultra geeky and some semi cultish wine producer, Dagenot. And to our audience, I want to make sure to clear that up. So now Rouleau, please explain Rouleau and Sandy, please, Dan. For those of us, yeah.
So Rouleau is an incredible old family in Meursault in Burgundy, who produces some of the most iconic and also the most trendy Chardonnays in Burgundy today. They are also some of the most expensive. My tasting group is a group of 7 to 8 Napa Valley winemakers and marketing and sales and fun people that I've been together with since 2007. So we've been together for a very long time. In a blind tasting, Rouleau versus Sandy, which is an accolade of the Rouleau wines, and Sashi's an incredible winemaker, and Raj is an incredible wine impresario. I don't know what you can call him. Raj is everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
These wines just showed so phenomenally well. The California wines, Santa Rita Hills, Santa Barbara County, they showed so phenomenally well against the Rouleau wines, stylistically, structurally, balance-wise, that they just blew my mind, right? And I just had this extra bottle, and knowing it's a Friday night, I'm like, I'm going to open this fucker while we're having this conversation. So I've been sipping on this all night. It's a 2016 Sandy Bentrock Chardonnay from Santa Rita Hills, and it is just a glide through Chardonnay. It's so beautiful. It's so perfect.
Central Coast. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Love that Chardonnay. I'm going to transition to my dessert wine course, which is, as usual, if you're a regular listener, you know I'm a fiction geek, and I'm going to recommend a couple of books, friends. If you are metaverse curious, Web 3.0 curious, confused, I want to tell you about a couple of kind of fundamental, basic works of fiction that can get you started. The first is, it's the novel that actually coined the term metaverse. It was published way back in 1992 by the fantastic science fiction writer Neil Stephenson. It's called Snow Crash. And it's amazing. I mean, it doesn't entirely hold up, but what's amazing about it is how much he predicted correctly.
Oh, man.
Great read. And then the other one is Ready Player One, which Ernest Cline published in 2011. It's another dystopian novel. And in this case, most of the plot does not take place in the metaverse. It's the metaverse, but it's called The Oasis. And what I love about both of these books is they kind of hold up Oregon as this kind of, city on a hill. All the smart people end up in Oregon. So
clearly fiction. Sorry,
yeah.
no, I couldn't have. No, sorry.
So yeah, if you're like me and you understand the world through fiction because you're a little bit creative and weird, I recommend both of those books. They definitely are good introductions. And for those of you who think you don't understand science fiction or don't understand Web 3.0 or don't understand the metaverse, please give them a try, because both of these authors are really good. So that's my dessert wine course. And with that, Martin, lead us out.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. It's always wonderful when we get a chance to connect with leaders and thought leaders in their field, and in particular when they are friends, and we can have that degree of familiarity and comfort and just shoot the shit. And I love that. So Dan Petroski, Petroski. You can find Dan Petroski online at Massicon Wines, and Massicon is M as in Mary, ASSICAN, Massicon.com. And also, the website's still live as of the rest of this year here, napathrives.org, napathrives.org. And you can still go to that. I'm sure we'll redirect it when the name changes. You can also find me there. And I'm also at reyeswinegroup.com and winewise.biz, B-I-Z.
And you can find me, Katherine Cole, at katherinecole.com. But don't go there. Go to theforetop.org, where you can find our social media handles. No, we are not on Discord yet. And no, we don't have a virtual reality experience for you. We just have good old-fashioned words and images. Listeners, please use your words and send us your jokes, and contact us over Web 2.0 to let us know what you thought of this episode.
Signing out from the Napa Valley. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
And signing out from the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Aviento.
This has been the Four Top Podcast. Katherine Cole is our executive producer. Izzy Kramer is our senior producer. And I'm Keelan King, sound supervisor. We are also assisted by audio editor Michelle Richards, editorial assistant Nick Toole, and media assistant Ruby Welkovich. Please visit our website, theforetop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, reach out to us on social media, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. And if you have not already subscribed to The Foretop on iTunes or Spotify, please do so and leave us a rating. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.